Hello and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Serge. Joining me today, I have a Nelly.
Hi, I'm here.
And a Wheeler.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Reminder that North 100 is brought to you by you with your support of the Patreon over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Welcome to part 3 of our Brothers War set review. We've covered everything today. We've covered everything prior to today, and today we are left with quite possibly the most exciting part of the set, which is the artifacts, which is not something that is very common for set reviews. I think that hasn't been the case since like Aether Revolt or something like that. It's been a very long time since we've been hyped for the artifacts. And there were so many artifacts, we even had to disperse them throughout the other colors just to make sure that we could get through it in one episode. We're also been covering lands, but there's only like 4 of them. A reminder that the way that we cover the set, it's not exhaustive. We don't talk about all of the cards by themselves. And you might notice that some artifacts and lands are missing. They've either been in the previous episodes or for the meld cards specifically, we covered all of those in episode 2. So if you've missed those and you're curious, go back and watch the other episodes and then also like and subscribe and do all that stuff with those. All right, I've talked long enough. Let's get into the cards. Start us off, Wheeler.
Ashnod's Harvester. 2-mana artifact creature. It's a construct for a 3/1. Whenever Ashnod's Harvester attacks, exile target card from a graveyard and unearth for 1 and a black. Stop. Leave my graveyard alone. Get some help. You can cast this off Ancient Tomb mana. So if you're playing an Ancient Tomb mana deck with artifacts, artifact aggro synergies, workshop, weenie sort of stuff, I don't hate it. Look, there was a time where people would even play stuff like Hovermere, or like they'd talk about playing Hovermere. And now you can play this. What? Oh, you don't know who they are. It's okay. And Unearth is just extra scary on this kind of thing. Like, I might even play this in Dredge just because it's a creature with Unearth. X1s are hard, like 3/1s are really hard to evaluate, but the fact that you could slam this into anything, have a trade and be like, cool, I'll just get it back later, and maybe you ate their Uro is kind of appealing, I would say.
I think the fact that it's a construct is also relevant. Increasingly, there have been +1/+1 synergies or tutor synergies specifically for constructs, which means like we're already talking about battle bots and those workshop weenie decks, but I think there is a slight additional upside to this card as well. But yeah, that's the only thing I want to add. All right, next up, Nelly.
I just would say I'm also going to try that Harvester in mono black aggro. I think even outside of Ancient Tomb mana,
apologize.
I think it's worth just because recurring exiling of your opponent's graveyard is so valuable.
Mono BZ, right?
Yeah. Or maybe Black Mold.
Yeah.
Might try it in that. Okay.
Right,
so we've got Blade Coil Serpent, X and 6 generic for an artifact creature serpent 5/4. But wait, when this enters the battlefield, for each blue spent to cast it, draw a card. And then for each black spent to cast it, each opponent discards a card. And for each red spent to cast it, it gets +1/+0 and trample and haste until end of turn. So let's break it down from the bottom. We've got a slightly more, just the philosophy of this card. The X in the top right-hand corner I mentioned earlier doesn't directly translate to anything. You just have to spend at least 6 mana on this, and then if you have extra colored mana lying around, you can put as much in as you want. So that's how it's called the Serpent, but it's sort of a Hydra, right? It's sort of a Hydra. It's got an X in the cost.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just very funny how you set that up. Yeah.
Anyways, so from the bottom, I think the easiest place to put this is medium red, or of course big red, or anything that's playing like, all the Glory Bringers or whatever. This one does cost 1 more, but then it has trample and haste, swings in for 8 for 6 mana, or 7 if you're using the Ancient Tomb, and then you have the 4 mountains. I think that's reasonable. Yep. The black, I'm not sure which deck. Maybe I could try this in the A+B of some of my goofy large mono black brews, maybe. But the blue, obviously, the blue and red ones are the easiest place to find a home for it. I don't know if it might be a sort of 101st card in Paradox Academy, but I feel like medium red could try it.
I'm shocked that you didn't just go to like what I internalize as Nelson Academy. Sure. Not in a derogatory way.
No, I get it.
Blue Black Academy.
Yeah, the bigger blue black.
Just like, I'm going to
stuff.
cast this idiot on turn 3, and if you have an answer, I've got another worm. Sure. 6 mana draw 3 on a 5/4. That's a It's like a Hydroid Krasis for Tolarian Academy.
Yeah, no, it is exciting to the idea of putting 10 mana into this to draw 5. It's like another a really, really expensive time twister.
Also, if you go infinite, that's I mean, it seems
Yeah.
weird to say, but again, that's a deck where it's like you get infinite mana and then what? Like you need something else. But if you get infinite mana through like Monamo combo or whatever,
Draw
then
every card but the bottom one of your deck, and then play your Thoracle, right?
Ugh,
I don't know.
Why'd you have to ruin it?
I don't know
You said,
how.
you talked about going infinite. I don't know what else do we want.
I don't know. Draw into something that has more soul than
Yeah.
Thoracle.
Yeah, just like
God.
Snorefest over here. Real quick, got a shout out to an old classic friend of mine, Mono Black Control.
Oh yeah.
Because like this is another mind twist is kind of
Yep.
spicy, and that right, and that's a deck that would play Grim Monolith, or like it would accelerate into big stuff. But like slamming this down turn 2, turn 3, even if you're only playing black and casting off a fast mana, like discard a card, deal with this 5/4 is exactly
Okay.
what that deck wants to be doing.
If we're gonna give shout outs to like maybe decks that we're not quite playing all the time right now, we've got to like try to summon Josh Lane back to the
God.
scene.
Oh, yeah.
Play blue,
Well,
black,
Any
red.
deck that's playing, yeah, the grease, right? If you're playing Cruel Ultimatum, Blade Coil Serpent's like, oh baby, I want it all.
Oh. Hello.
You discard. I draw. Attack for
Oh,
6.
discard a card. I draw a card.
What are you
Take
gonna do?
6.
I'm a weasel.
That's a
Sorry.
very funny joke if you played Magic in Victoria like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Somewhere the grease is like, is somebody talking about me?
Oh.
All right. Next up is me. And we've got Cityscape Leveler. This is an 8 mana, 8/8 construct with trample. When you cast a spell and whenever it attacks, destroy up to one target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a tapped Power Stone token. It also unearths for 8. I mean, it's big. It's rude.
Big.
Yeah. This is, pardon me, this is right at that sweet spot between something that's, it's funny because it's 8 mana, but something that's castable in like the big mana decks, but something you're also pretty happy to reanimate. Obviously, it doesn't have an ETB. It needs to turn sideways, but you know, if it does turn sideways, you're pretty happy. This is like the sort of threshold you want to see in a reanimation target, which is if you untap with it, it's going to be a really bad day for your opponent. And so it wins in 3 turns. It has trample, so it can't be chump blocked, and it can deal with stuff. It does give your opponent theoretically tap Power Stone tokens, but if you're destroying relevant permanents, it doesn't really matter all that much. Like you'll destroy a planeswalker and give them a mana rock or something.
Mind if I pull out an old standby?
Yeah.
Because there's a deck. I'm looking at this and I'm like, wow, I could channel this out.
Not just channel Sneak and Show,
Yeah.
right?
But if I
Or
channel it
yeah.
and blow something up, or just cast rituals into this, or sneak attack it, and then sacrifice it and I get to unearth it, I'm thinking garbage platter.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like the sneak attack storm
Yep.
channel dot deck. Like,
Yeah, Mind's Desire. Flip this, cast for free. Yeah.
I mean, channel is spicier because it also gets the cast trigger, obviously, as opposed to
well, mine's. Sorry, go ahead, finish.
yeah, as opposed to like the traditional ways of trying to cheat it into play.
Yeah.
But yeah, that big mana. I also like it in Reanimator because of Unearth. You can ditch it, and later, if the game goes long enough, you do also have value. Like Unearth notably gives it haste, so it gets that attack trigger with trample. Like 8/8 Trampler, Vindicate is nothing. Well, not Vindicate, it's non-land, but nothing to scoff at. Yeah, perfectly acceptable big lad.
I just like how stout it is. It's,
Oh yeah.
ooh.
Do you think the whole time it's just like step?
It's got dainty little feet.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
Off camera, it's wearing heels.
It's like,
Yeah.
how does it level the city?
It's so big and just skittering it on its
yeah,
way back
yeah.
to its Midwestern home to eat a bunch of chili.
Somebody like Urza turns on the light. It's like, eep, skitters away like a cockroach. You're like,
It's this big, but it's afraid of mice robots.
yeah. All right, next up, Wheeler.
Clay Champion, another name of a Midwestern football player. For X and 4, so similar to the Serpent that we discussed, it's a construct artifact creature token. Its base is a 2/2, but Clay Champion enters the battlefield with 3/1/1 counters on it for each green spent to cast it. And when Clay Champion enters the battlefield, choose up to 2 other target creatures you control. For each white spent to cast it, put a 1/1 counter on each of them. I gotta tell you, when I first saw this card, I was thinking about it in like medium green or mono green Stompy, where it's just a 4 mana 8/8.
4 mana, 8/8.
Yeah, not bad, eh?
That's pretty good,
What are we, Hearthstone?
right?
Yeah, 7/7. But
Yeah.
and I'm like, that's big, but you could just chum block it, you know? Like, I need trample. I need something. And it's an artifact creature without protection, so it's vulnerable. Then I was thinking, well, what about white? Like, if I pay 4 mana for this card, and then I get a 2/2, and I just get to put counters on everything across the board. And I'm like, 4 mana in white? Like, I'm not playing this card. Where am I? Like, I can recruiter for it, which is kind of hot. But then it hit me. Green and white. And I know that sounds...
Hold on. All right.
Wait for it. I know how stupid that sounds, but I think people looking at evaluating this card and the Serpent, it's easy to get just so in like down the road of like monocolored deck. But in like a green-white counters deck or just green-white bid range, paying 4 mana for a 5/5 that then just buffs 2 of your other creatures, that's impressive. That's like Angel of Invention, but, you know, well, playable in our format, RIP. So yeah, I would not be surprised if I die to this card, is what I'm saying.
I love that classic evaluation from this podcast.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just worry they're going to bushwhack my chump blocker before combat and hit me with the 8/8, man.
No, Clay, no.
Bad Clay. Yeah.
I do want to evaluate it from the point of view of a like battle bot or construct deck, and this is probably my least favorite, just because green and white, with the exception of Tempered Steel, it's like the only reason to play white. It's just you're not playing a lot of white, and in particular in those decks, you're not playing a lot of pips. So it like you can kind of think of it in that way, but you're like, no, the actual like meat and bread of this card, which is the text in the middle section, does not make it a good fit for that one. Whereas the previous one, the snake with red and black and blue, is potentially playable in that deck,
Right.
even in different modes.
Workshop and 3 blue mana, you're still pretty happy. 5/4
Exactly.
draw a card,
Yeah,
it's
like
fine.
any of those. But this one, you're just like, nah. All right, let's move on to Nelly.
Combat Courier, a 1 mana 1/1 construct creature with pay 2, sacrifice this, draw a card, and unearth for a blue. It's an egg. It's a little egg with legs.
I'm clapping. That's
Yeah.
great.
No,
What
it's
if you're-
very cute. Reminds us of my Courier. Go ahead.
What if your egg could attack, Wheeler?
Oh, my eggs do attack. Surge, if you'll allow me to explain the machinations of Lifespark Spellbomb. I'm not actually going to do that. But, yeah.
You know, I like this. Draws 2 cards for a reasonable amount of mana, but you can pay it all in installments. Can attack, can block, can really block.
Really
Loves blocking.
Yeah.
God, I
It's
love
like the
blocking.
opposite of Bomat Courier.
Yeah,
The blue
yeah.
Courier versus the red Courier, right? I think this one's pretty straightforward. The draw card activation is pretty expensive, and so I feel
It
like
doesn't involve tapping, which
That's
is
right.
so important
you
on
can
this
do it
one.
with haste, absolutely. Yeah, just like all the other good eggs, you can draw the card immediately. Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. If you need another egg and you want to chump block with your egg, this is the egg for you.
I'd even try it in my weenie decks, in my aggressive decks, because sometimes you worry about. I mean, Bomat Courier is great because it's aggressive, and then you can cash it in later. And while not to the same extent, just the ability to be like, well, pretty dead here. Let's try and get something else.
It's also the second unearth creature for single mana, I think.
That
there's
1/2 that can tap and untap things, right?
Yes, Fate Stitcher. But
Stitcher,
that is not like that's a 4 mana card by itself. Like Dregscape Zombie
Yeah.
in the decks, and there's another one later in the
Gets in
set.
just to be a body for 1 mana, right? In
Realistically.
the full mill deck.
Yeah,
right?
Dredge cares about it because it's a zombie, but Hermit Druid decks
Yeah,
are just like, I need a 1 mana creature that'll bring it back. And like a bug Hermit Druid deck or a 4-color, especially if it's also on like Flash Hulk package or whatever, like this is nice to have a 1 mana unearth card that is also just like, if I draw it early, I can play it, block something, sack it, maybe find it, just draw a card. And then also it's in the yard for when I need to combo
This works
off.
great with Lab Maniac because you mill your whole deck, it unearths,
Yep.
and it's the draw spell. So like
Yep.
this is probably nuts in that deck.
That's a really good call.
Yeah. Oh no. All right. Next up is me. We've got the Energy Refractor. I'm sorry. Next up is actually Wheeler. Wheeler.
Oh, Energy Refractor.
No, you
2
gotta
mana.
steal his egg. It felt great.
Hold on, this is a nut. 2 mana, in more ways than one. It's a 2 mana artifact that when it ETBs, I draw a card. I draw a card.
Just Wheeler.
He's
He's
draw a
the,
card.
he's the one who's gonna play it.
Every person who casts Energy Refractor, Wheeler still draws the card.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If I'm in a match and all of a sudden it's like, whoop, it's like, I swear to God, I didn't do this. Somebody in Texas cast this card. So when it ETBs, I draw a card. I draw the card, and then he can pay 2 generic to filter this. So this is another Prophetic Prism, but importantly, it doesn't tap to use the activated ability. So if we generate infinite colorless mana in our Basalt Monolith, like Rings of Bright Earth combo, or if we are comboing off with Manamo and Tolarian Academy, Deserted Temple Tolarian Academy, this lets us just filter. Like, we would just play this because it's a 2 mana artifact that ETBs draws a card, which is why Prophetic Prism sees play. But this is the first time we've had one of these that doesn't have to tap to filter, so it's just free. Like, you get the infinite mana, and then you're never stuck with like a War Gate in your hand, and you're like, how do I cast this? Or, Second Sunrise having double white, which can be actually pretty difficult when you're setting up loops. I know it seems like a weird card. We even talked about this before this episode.
I was like, this looks like just another egg. Let's cut it. Wheeler's like, no, actually, hold on.
And this time I mean it. Like, it's actually it's a huge role player in eggs. So yeah, slam dunk.
All right, we'll go back to me.
Yep.
And then we'll go to Nelly. I've got the Liberator. Urza's Battle Thopter. This is a 3 mana 1/2. Doesn't pass the Hovermere test, but I'll keep reading. 3 mana 1/2 legendary artifact creature Thopter. It has flash and flying. And you may cast colorless spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. Whenever you cast a spell, if that amount of mana spent to cast a spell is greater than Liberator's power, put a +1/+1 counter on the Liberator. Okay, well, this is just sealing the coffin on Hovermere.
I mean, it's 1 more mana to cast.
And Shimmermere.
Well, Shimmermere doesn't give your Eldrazi Titans flash.
Yeah,
So there's going to be some commander players that care about this more.
No, that's what I'm saying is that this puts the Shimmermere's in a coffin.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, only Mere Tribal wants Shimmermere.
Yeah.
Right.
All right,
was
so
confused about
the obvious comparison here is Shimmermere. Shimmermere is a 3 mana 2/2 that says artifact spells have flash. This has flying. And this has this really terrifying growth threat. I don't think the colorless spells having flash is going to be all that relevant in our format, but I absolutely love this in battle bots. I love this in aggressive artifact decks. This is possibly also playable. Maybe not in your welder lists. Probably not as much.
No. But this is terrifying.
I think in the decks with the Darksteel Juggernaut, this is totally fine.
It's not limited to once per turn.
Yeah, you can turn this into a 3/4 real quick.
Should we put a limiter on this? No, artifact decks aren't able to go like 2 mana
4,
card.
4,
Another
yeah.
one, free Mirror Enforcer.
It's interesting because it's not templated the same way as Evolve. So in some ways it's potentially more abusable, especially
It actually cares how much mana you spend.
spend. Okay, yeah.
yeah, I was going to say yeah.
Right.
But still, you play it, and then next turn you play a 2, and then
It doesn't
Ritual through a 3 or
it
whatever,
doesn't
yeah.
absolutely pop off with affinity is what we're thinking about
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Your thought not thoughtcast, which is the creature thoughtcast?
Yeah, the 2/2 for 7.
Thought Monitor.
Thought monitor. Yeah, thought monitor looks at this and you're like, "Oh, not quite."
Well, maybe. Just make sure you
Yeah.
pay 2. Let's pay 2 mana.
If you
Only
pay-
have
oh
5
my God.
artifacts instead of 6.
Okay, that's also still kind of busted.
Kathleen was talking. We were talking about this card for punt counter punt, and Kathleen said that it looks like a giant chicken.
It does.
And I can't not see it
Oh,
now.
Yeah, sorry, now you all see it too.
Every time
Yeah.
I've seen this card, I just think it's a big chicken, and all the soldiers are like little corn kernels trying to escape.
Ursa wants to have a snack.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think this card's solid. Like, it's Magical Christmas Landing, obviously, but in your Battle Bots deck, you can like workshop on 1, and then on 2 you Ancient Tomb, and you cast a 2 and a 3.
Well, even not thinking about like Magical Christmas Land, just the fact that this is a flash flying threat is so huge for that deck. Because that is like a lot of aggressive decks. It's very hard to close out games, especially as your opponent's starting to. I'm just picturing lines where you're behind, you've got a piece of equipment on the board, and any regular creature would enter play, get removed. He wouldn't be able to do this. But this can flash and end a turn, pick up a sword for lethal or something like that, right? Like, you don't even need to be cute and be like, oh, I can get so much more value out of it. Just even that play pattern itself. And you don't actually have a lot of flying threats. There's a lot of creatures that give you Thopter tokens, but like, this is huge. Just this is a really, really, really good card for that deck, for more so than just like the obvious over the top reasons. It fills in a lot of gaps and it has upside.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. And now we'll
Good battle chicken. Yeah.
Good battle chicken. And now we'll go to Nelson.
Sure.
All right. Nelson Mina.
Unless it's an egg.
Nelson.
Wheeler.
You thought you could get away.
All right, fine.
It's fine.
Back
Take
to
it.
Wheeler.
Take it.
Mishra's Research Desk. 1 mana artifact. Pay 1, tap, sacrifice Mishra's Research Desk. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them until the end of your next turn. You can play that card. And has Unearth for 1 in a red. If we didn't just get a really good egg in the previous set, and then another good egg, or 2, I guess, in this set, I might be looking at this card for, well, eggs. But with this, I don't actually think so. The exile is really tricky, where like you can put cards in your graveyard and eggs all you want. That's fine. That's a second hand for that deck. But the fact that it exiles both can be a little difficult. Like, I don't particularly like exiling my Black Lotus or Tolarian Academy. You could just choose to play that one.
Stop shuffling those two so they're always right next to each other. That's not great for me.
The judge said I could tape them together once, and the point is, like, that deck likes having. I like cards in my graveyard. I like cards in my library. Don't like cards in exile, and also just I don't like the urgency that this card pushes, where eggs is just actually a deck that can take its time. It can sit. It can cook. And even the Unearth being able to rebuy, if you play it early, sack, maybe hit a land drop and do it. It's just the slots are hyper competitive for 1 mana artifacts that replace themselves now. And I think this one falls short, especially after Combat Courier that we just got.
What does anybody think about just normal red decks for this? Because a bunch of these red draw card spells cost 2 or 3 mana. And then you still have to play the cards either that turn or sometimes it's the next turn. But this one, the clause is this turn. Or sorry, the clause is until end of your next turn, and the mana requirement is really small, right? You're looking at somewhere between 1 and 3 mana you've spent to get access to it. I guess on the Unearth it's always 3.
It's like, it's no light up the stage, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, maybe I played this in eggs. I've thought about it enough.
Yeah.
Maybe I do get an eggs.
I do like what you're thinking about there, though, because a lot of those red decks have been looking for ways to get more card advantage. And like Robber of the Rich has helped, Light Up the Stage has helped.
Young Feldon we saw in the last episode was a good one, too.
Yeah, people are even playing like Chandra Pyromaster for the ability to exile cards. And obviously it offers more flexibility than that, but that's a great 0. So maybe it's expensive and it's kind of dirtily. So you'd want to be like a more mid-rangey, but then a mid-rangey deck is kind of looking at this and being like, you could be anything else.
Okay, we're giving the research desk a question mark.
All right, now Nelly.
Perennial Behemoth. I love this one. I love the name. I love the art. I love the card. 5 mana, 2/7 beast with you may play lands from your graveyard. That's right, Serge. We've got another one of these. It also unearths for green. So that's fantastic for these graveyard decks, lands decks. They're putting lots of stuff in their graveyard. You can do a giant mill or like several mill effects in a row, and then when you need to get your, strip mine out for the crucial turn where you blow up all their lands and gain infinite life, you have a Ram and Epic Sphere for that one turn. It also is just a 2/7, so like when you're playing it out normally, you've got a pretty serious blocker.
I do want to acknowledge the combo potential of that, of like, this is a Crucible that you can slam out of nowhere for cheaper as well. It's 2 mana instead of 3 mana. It's like safe-ish in your graveyard. You can sit there, your opponent can be waiting on it, and then you're like, fast bond, unearth, GG.
You just get to loam into it.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, okay, I'll remember.
Yeah,
that you're
and you
there.
no longer need to hit your Ramanap or your Crucible with your Savines. You can use your Savines for both the Fastbone and the Strip Mine, and then you can unearth for 2.
Not to mention, it being 5 mana isn't actually the end of the world, because 3 drops are abundant in the lands decks, like a lands mid-range or even the combo version, and like Eldritch Evolution just finds this card pretty easily.
Yep.
This makes me start considering old lands decks used to run like Intuition as a way to
Okay.
do stuff, and all of a sudden, like which do you pick? Do you put it in hand? You're like, yeah, I'll take a Crucible to hand. Or like, no, not that one. Okay, I'll take a Crucible to my graveyard. Like, no, not like that, right? Like this makes a lot of those old, really busted choice tutors even more difficult.
Just gifts ungiven. Find Perennial Behemoth plus Glacial Chasm. Fail to find the other 2.
There you go.
It's kind of hot.
I mean, hilariously now, you could just find 4 Crucibles, right?
Yeah.
You're like, Crucible with legs, Perennial Behemoth, and like one of the 6 mana elementals that's also basically just a Crucible. And you're like, pick your poison.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably not good, but it's funny that you can do it.
yeah.
Like,
I'd still lose to it, even though it's not good.
we've had 12 Chads. How about 12 Crucibles, right? Any other final thoughts? This card's sweet.
I think it's just a slam in all the decks that are playing.
I think it's-
Ramanap. Like
Yeah.
if you already have Ramanap.
One of the best names for a Magic card of all
that too,
time.
that's
It
right.
does so much double duty. Yeah. Great.
All right, next up, me. Portal 2 Phyrexia is a 9 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacks 3 creatures. At the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It's a Phyrexian in addition to its other types. Hey, you ever wanted to be able to tinker into like a one-sided board wrath? Because like this is so spicy, and I do remember there was a time, a kinder time in our format where people would go get off of Academy Rector. We'd go get the 7 mana
Debtor's Knell.
Debtor's Knell, and that was unbeatable.
so long ago.
right?
That
Like
was good, but I remember
forget
that.
Sandy Bullock, right? Wow, Bollock. I can't even say any words right now.
What
I
did
had
you call my wife?
Bullock, Sandra Bullocks. I hate that deck. Full disclosure, I had a poutine before recording, and I'm fighting off the itis. But yeah, like the second effect of this card already by itself is very strong. Like Debtor's Knell is busted. The ability to bring back any card from any graveyard. Obviously, it's predicated on the fact of you or your opponent having creatures that matter. So this might be a meta call, but any of the big artifact decks having a tutorable enters the battlefield one-sided creature removal is wild. Because, I mean, obviously, if you're against goblins or hoof, 3 creatures isn't going to be enough. But against the majority of decks, medium decks, mid-range decks, 3 creatures, and a lot of artifact decks have the ability to recur threats or recur their artifacts. So you could do this a couple of times if you need to.
Yeah, I know that I somewhat recently have started preaching the like, you don't have to Goblin Weld or anything that's uncastable or big. Or like Tinker for Kappa Cannoneer is the best you can do. Why do anything else? And then this card shows up and it's just like, are you sure about that? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, no, I'll Tinker for this. I'll Welder this. I'll make the exception.
I don't think this is a slam dunk in every deck. I do think this is a meta call, much like a control deck, trying to do the math on how many Wraths to play. I can think of a lot of metagames where this would actively be bad. For example, if there's a lot of Goblins players. So if they're going wide, maybe not so much, but man, when this lines up just right, oh, like little angels. Wheeler.
Razor Lash Transmogrant. 2 mana for a 3/1 artifact creature. Zombie. Razor Lash Transmogrant can't block. Wasn't doing that anyways. And 4 black, return Razor Lash Transmogrant from your graveyard to the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it. This ability costs 4 less to activate if an opponent controls 4 or more non-basic lands. And it's like that Star Wars prequel meme of like, and you can only do it once per turn, right? Once per turn, right? You can only activate this once in a game, right?
Once per turn, right?
Jesus. This is so good for an aggressive threat. Such a in Canadian Highlander, you're often going to fight opponents playing more than 2 colors. And they will likely have decks where they will have, say, 4 or more non-basic lands in play as early as turn 4, sometimes turn 3. And even if they don't, and not on turn 4, like later, it takes a while for your blue-white opponent to get to that, that amount. That's fine. That's when this card's at its best. When you have nothing else to do, and you're just like, well, here's a 4/2. Here's a 4/2. Yeah. Hey, Nelson.
Yeah, I think this is better than Skyclave Shade. Like, it's just bigger.
I mean, you play them both, right?
Yeah. I'm not cutting Skyclave Shade, but like Skyclave Shade was pretty great for the deck Wheeler threw to me for was mono black aggro. But I think also in like the black green or the Mardu, anything where you're trying to get value off your Skull Clamp, and that's the main point. This one's exciting.
Well, real quick as well, Scrap Heap Scrounger is a 3/2 for 2 that comes back, but you have to exile a creature card from your graveyard to bring it back. This is more of the same, but potentially even better, because there's the only real limit is your opponent and their mana base. But like even mono white Death and Taxes will probably have. I think the only matchup that you have to worry about is like red deck wins or goblins, and every other deck you're probably going to be able to get that full discount.
It's possible the Blue Moon players will start watching out for it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, hey, Urza Saga's pretty good and finds Relic of Progenitus.
Yeah.
Why am I saying that? Never mind. Just kidding. It doesn't.
Yeah. So yes, many different forms. It's a zombie. It's an artifact. It's going to be live in all the matchups.
It's kind of funny how mono black aggro, and apologies for what I'm about to say, was like this deck where you played boomer cards like Carnophage, so, like that have been enhanced by turbo boomer cards like Sinkhole, and now
What's the dig?
Well, I didn't even get to the hatred that you're casting.
Oh yeah.
And now there's just this density of, like, it already had a density, but in the past couple of years especially, there's just so many 2-mana 3-power creatures that come back. And then your 3-drop slot is like what? Opposition Agent and Rotting Regisaur? Like, that deck is just
Hypnotic Spectre.
You gotta have something to cast off your
cards.
Dark Ritual, right? Yeah.
Dothy Voidwalker has Shadow, right?
Does actually.
Yeah.
Sick. Nelly, you're up.
Simian Simulacrum. Monkey. Ook. 3-mana artifact creature ape 2/1, but when Simian Simulacrum enters the battlefield, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. That could be the ape or it could be someone else. And it has Unearth for 2 green. Really exciting. Ape attack, ape block, ape pump other creature.
It's not Ape Escape because it has Unearth.
Right. That we already had Ape Escape.
Yeah,
Theros, right?
This card is so good.
Yeah. Big ape, hit face, go fast, beep beep.
Well, this is such an amazing mid-range card because I can't think of decks I don't want to put this in, right? Like, you can blink it, you can cast it off of anything, you can splash it. I don't even know if you care about the Unearth, but the Unearth is upside.
The Unearth is pretty good.
Well, the Unearth, don't get me wrong, the Unearth is very, very good, but there's decks that I would play this in that aren't Unearth, but maybe it could just be the Workshop mana that I'm looking at for that one.
It's exciting in Black Mold because you can pump your Trampler and then put the clamp on it. It's exciting in any other deck where you have the clamp. Like even, I don't know, even Mono Black Aggro might consider this card just because the stats are so good.
Like a 3-mana 4/3, or like you said, pump it on something else and sack it to something else, or make something else big, blink it. Yeah. Right? Blink and Unearth work very favorably together too. Hilariously, right. Did you know I didn't know that interaction?
Wait, hold on.
You could, well, because the way Unearth works is if it would die or go to hand, you exile it instead. Right. If it would go somewhere other than exile, it goes to exile. But if you're already sending something to exile, then you can choose which thing is sending it to exile.
Yeah, I knew that. I definitely didn't get it wrong on stream earlier today.
Yeah.
Well, it's weird. It's confusing. Yeah. Why can you blink Unearth creatures and they stick around? That's weird.
I was literally writing the judge script for this when I looked at the rules notes for Unearth, and I thought I knew how Unearth worked because it's a 17-year-old mechanic or whatever, and I learned something new. So yeah, like this in a blink deck, right?
2008. Thank you very much.
Right.
Regardless,
I had to shave my beard off because it was all gray.
One point that we haven't actually covered on Unearth that is, I think, the most relevant for this card out of all the other ones is that you're not casting the card, you're just exiling it, and then it comes back into play. And so for like a red-green monsters deck, or I mean any green X just like beatdown deck, you have an uncounterable 4-mana or 4-power haste creature,
Yep.
which is huge because how often do you fight a control deck, get them down to like 4,
And you can't finish
and then
them.
you just can't kill them?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, this card is a huge sleeper. Like, there's so many niche cases where you're like, oh, wow.
God, and it's an ape. It just keeps the hits keep coming.
Another great name too.
Yeah.
That was you.
That was me.
And now it's me.
Yeah, your turn.
Next, me. Spectrum Sentinel is a 1-mana 1/2 artifact creature soldier. Protection from multicolor, and whenever a non-basic land enters the battlefield under your opponent's control, gain a life. This is, I think, a sleeper card. This is the sort of card that I think you could say, like, best cards you're not playing. And I think it's only good in very specific decks because it's like, Wrenn and 6 can't really deal with this. Oko can't really deal with this. There's a lot of like low threat creatures that can deal with this. And it's going to gain you so much life. We were talking about with the zombie recurring creature before, how many non-basic lands your opponents are going to play. Yeah, like every fetch land they play is potentially a 3-point life swing on your side. And it's weird because you're like, it's 1-mana 1/2. How many 1/2s do you want to play? Well, food for thought. I don't know a ton of homes for this, but I think it is going to perform well above its mana and power level, or like mana and power toughness level, I should say, in that respect. And is something worth considering if you're playing either soldiers or cards that care about artifacts.
I would try it in K-Blade.
Yeah.
That deck has, like, if you're playing multiple Sword ofs, you tend to have, like, your mana's crimped every turn, no matter what turn it is. You just have places to put your mana, and protection from multicolored is a fairly powerful ability that's not on a lot of cards. So I don't know if it would ultimately, like, stand the test of time in that deck, but any deck where you're putting a bunch of mana into equipment, I would try this 1-drop.
It's also just reasonable against land combo decks.
Right.
Like some lands decks can't go reliably, or they can't go infinite reliably, depending on how they do it against you. With this card in play, which is kind of infuriating.
Right. Or they're going infinite, and then you just go infinite as well. And so then you're like, like,
Now what?
yeah. It's like, well, can you kill me some other way? I'm not just going to scoop to infinite life if I have infinite life.
Yeah.
Better
and then
sleeve
like,
up.
well, it's a draw instead of you losing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Better sleeve up your barbarian ring.
Oh, baby. It's been a while.
The Babby ring.
All right, Wheeler, you're up.
Surge engine.
Maybe I should take it. No, I'm just kidding.
Do you want this? Because I think of you when I see this card.
Well, it has my name right on it.
Oh, no, I just meant it's a 2-mana artifact creature. Construct 3/2 with Defender. And you can pay a blue, and Surge Engine loses Defender and gains this creature can't be blocked. 2 and a blue, Surge Engine becomes blue and has base power and toughness 5/4. Activate it only if it doesn't have Defender. And then pay 4 to... Pay 4 double blue, draw 3 cards, activate only if Surge Engine is blue and only once. So
I'm busted.
That 5/4 is not till end of turn either.
no, it's permanent.
For
This
only
is
3 mana.
Yeah.
Well, 4. It's like 4 mana.
Well,
no.
6.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
but it's overturns
Yeah.
and it's on it like presumably in an
yeah.
artifact deck. Like again,
Sorry, none of the abilities still end of turn. I thought
Yeah.
the first ability was still end of turn.
Nope.
You only have to drop Defender once?
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's a figure of destiny.
Yeah, it's a figure of destiny, but like you playing this on 1 in an artifact ancient 2-mana deck is super easy to do. And like honestly, you don't even need to pump the mana into it to make it relevant. Like a 3/2 just
It's already a
trades
watch wolf.
so many things
Yeah.
on the defense, but that's okay. You can and you will, because then 3/2 can't be blocked. And then, oh no, my artifact deck. I wish I had mana lying around. Here you go. Yeah, geez. Yeah, I hate to say it, but Surge is busted. I mean, in the right deck.
Why
It's
did
really
Blue-
good.
Why did Blue get 2 figures of destiny before Boros got a second one? Because the snow one's not a bad card. I don't know. I haven't seen it popping up in a lot of lists, but I still think Ascended Spirit is fine. And
Sorry.
and this one seems nuts.
I'm almost thinking of this also in a blue tempo deck.
You could Sorensen this thing.
Well, I'm just thinking it can't be blocked, which is
Yeah.
so relevant in those decks of like put Curiosity on this, protect it with a combat with like counter spells and stuff.
Yeah, the abilities don't have to be on as sorcery.
exactly.
So this could just be like your 2-power unblockable 5/4 that you protect.
3 power.
I know it's weird to say
yeah,
in a
2 mana. I meant. Yeah.
I know it's weird to say in a deck filled with like Quirion Dryads, but it's kind of the one thing that's unappealing about this card in like Sorensen or low curve tempo is that this card doesn't scream to me I play 20 creatures, you know? Like to me this card it's like one of many, because if it dies to shock, I'm thinking about shocks.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're super low on your threat density, and like this card does continually get bigger, but not while you're doing other things.
Sure.
So for the tempo decks, they might not necessarily want to play this kind of card. But for the aggressive decks that just have so much mana lying around, like maybe like a mono blue mid-range deck. I know people have been sleeving up some Tempest Gins locally. Maybe that has the home there. Like,
this is harder to protect. Like Rex Age is
Yeah.
everywhere, and that's a lot harder to counter than some other things, you know?
I could maybe see this going into Blue Moon.
Or-
Go ahead.
well, just Academy Ramp, actually.
Sure.
Right? It's just cheap and trades with something.
Yeah.
That's kind of hot.
Sure.
And if they don't do anything about it, you're like, okay, 10 mana, draw 3, I guess.
This is shocking. This 2-mana mythic is really good and flexible, more so than we thought before.
All right, Nelson, you're up.
It's Thran Spider. Hooray! Another spider. 3 mana, 2/4 artifact creature spider with reach. And when this enters the battlefield, you and target opponent each create a tapped Power Stone token. Okay, can't tell how much I like that. But for 7, you can look at the top 4 cards of your library, reveal an artifact from among them, and put it in your hand. Put the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. And you can do that as many times as you want. So obviously your Power Stone token definitely has something great you're going to do with it, if expensive. And your opponents may or may not. The stats are okay. It's, you get the giant spider stats for only 3. You can workshop or, of course, Ancient Tomb mana it. I waited so long. And in this situation where you're Paradox Academy or you have any of the mana combos we talked about before, you can kind of go infinite with this thing right away. It's sort of like Urza, but you don't need a blue.
Well, this like instantly, if you have infinite mana, this just finds your win con.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because
You
your win
just get
cons,
all of your artifacts out of your library.
Exactly.
Cast them all. Yeah.
I think even Paul chuckled over you saying, well, when you have infinite mana.
Yeah. Yeah, I just like how he smoothly went from 3 mana 2/4 reach into infinite mana.
I get exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Does Nelly have a soft spot for spiders? Is this card bad?
I think this card's bad.
Yeah, it's probably not going to make the cut.
Yeah,
Really?
I'm
You
not
think it's
playing-
bad?
I hate the idea of giving my opponent a token.
I mean, they do untap with it first, right?
Yeah,
So
they
they
untap with it first.
You basically give them a free mana, which is very
The
risky.
thing it has going for it is that it's a piece of an infinite combo. Like it's a payoff, right? That finds the other payoffs while also being a halfway decent blocker. 3 mana 2/4,
Yeah.
but with reach. So it does block the 3/1s just fine.
Let me say this. It's not, I don't want to call it bad. I want to
Yeah, I
call
don't
it
think-
unnecessary.
It's not awful, but it's probably not making the
I'm
cut.
surprised you don't like it for Academy.
No, it's
or,
just
what's the untappy one?
What do you
Paradox.
Yeah.
It's Staff of Domination all over again sort of thing, where it's just like not necessarily bad and does stuff while we go infinite and can theoretically protect us, but just like we just learned to play better cards.
Sure.
More flexible cards, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
I will always go to bat for spiders.
Yeah.
And like you could certainly play this in a deck and it could be great. It could stop their 3/3s from killing you and then help you win the game.
You got 2 spiders.
It just might be I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's a great set for spiders. But I think it's probably wrong if you have access to the cards or whatever to include this one.
All right. Me. Transmogrant's Crowned. Transmogrants?
Transmogrant.
So it's an isekai, confirmed. 2 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. Whenever equipped creature dies, draw a card. Equipped for either 2 or for black. Right, this card's sweet. So it's not quite a bone splitter. And it's not quite a skull clamp. But it does do both of the things that both of those cards do, which is great. One of which is kill your opponent, and the other of which is draw a card. It is more expensive than both of those artifacts. Those artifacts are both very powerful and also very cheap, both casting for 1 and equipping for 1, whereas this one casts for 2 and most of the time also equips for 2. But it offers flexibility. But that being said, our format includes a lot of very powerful tutors, and often if you're playing powerful equipment, you also have the means to find it. So I think you just In a situation you want Bone Splitter, you find Bone Splitter. In the situation where you want Skull Clamp, you find Skull Clamp. Like, this doesn't even kill your own creatures, which is a big and important part of Skull Clamp, right? But it does say draw a card. I'm having a hard time on
Can
this
maybe
one.
see it. Can maybe see it in mono black aggro or maybe black mold. Like in the black aggressive decks might play it. I'm
But
not sure that's gonna
it's
stick around.
so expensive.
It's not as good as Skull Clamp.
I mean, one black to the upfront
Yeah.
cost is definitely a lot, but one black that's just so easy to throw it around on any of your like creatures that you just want to die, and it actively just gets.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Felden that we talked about last episode, where it's just they're damned if they do, damned if they don't at a certain point.
I'm just looking at, okay.
I think maybe Aristocrats wants a density of Skull Clamps too, right? Like the
Yeah, but
3 and
again,
4 color
Skull Clamp
Aristocrats.
kills the creature, where this doesn't.
But they have all the
a
sack
sack
outlets
outlets?
already. Yeah.
So I talked about this today, where I don't think it's worthwhile comparing this to Skull Clamp because nothing is like Skull Clamp.
That's fair. That's
Skull
fair.
Clamp is one of the most broken cards of all time and is just an actual factual, oops, we wrote down the wrong number sort of thing, right?
Right.
Or like nobody checked this.
It does draw 2 cards. Pretty messed
Yeah.
up, right?
Yes.
And so what it does is super unique, and because of that, it's busted. This card has a genuine application, and I think that all of the things that are worded here are good.
Yes, I
Make
agree.
creature bigger. You block creature, me draw card. You kill big creature, I draw card. I have sack outlet, me combo. I don't know, I'm a caveman. Me combo sack outlet with card,
Yeah.
draw card.
I just have a hard time thinking about an aggressive deck, what I would cut to include this. Because, like, I'm not cutting Bone Splitter if I'm running Bone Splitter for this. I'm not cutting Jite. I don't even know if I'd replace Grafted War Gear with this. Because, like, 3 mana, as you said, your black aggressive deck, 3 mana to cast and equip that, or cast and equip, +3/+2 is big.
I think Grafted War Gear is stone unplayable, but nobody tell Alex. Yeah, I think that card is just like
It's seen its time, it's
100%
past its prime.
unplayable now.
Really?
Unclean.
Yeah, it's just
Wow. All right. This is your opportunity, those dear viewer, to roast Nelson. Roast Nelson in the comments.
Please roast
Me
Nelson
too.
in the
Yeah,
Roast
please
Wheeler
roast
in the
Nelson
comments.
in the comments.
Are you on?
Wheeler doesn't like the exoskeleton anymore.
Do you not?
Or the War Gear, I mean.
Do you not like War Gear either?
I love War Gear.
I love War Gear.
I'm a War
love
Gear.
War Gear.
this man said Hypnotic Spectre
I
when we
did.
were listing best 3 drops.
I also love Hypnotic Spectre.
Well, we were listing Boomerish 3.
is there no
Boomerish
joy left
3
in your
drops.
heart?
Look, I'm above 30 now too, but I'm grounded enough to understand that some of these cards are a little outdated.
I mean, when you're looking for just like raw stats, is anything currently beating War Gear for at 3 mana?
Shatter's beating War Gear. That's what's going on.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, no, I just think there's better equipment that like the raw stats thing is cool, but you know what's even cooler? Shadow Spear.
Shadow Spear.
Shadow
is a
Spear,
great
right?
card.
I wouldn't
That's
cut
true.
the Shadow Spear for this.
No. I do really like this card. I think you play it along those. What do you cut? Well,
That's the problem.
maybe
I have.
your black mold deck doesn't need like one of your 3 drops, or like maybe do you really need him to Torak? Do you really need that?
I wondered if you were going to come after him to Turak next.
Yeah, I'm also I
What
mean
next?
I'm
Is
famously
nothing sacred?
I'm famously a him to Torak hater though.
Maybe you can't really afford 2 life for this Thoughtseize.
I'd say I want to put together a
that
deck
I'd
with
never
only
say.
cards that Wheeler thinks are garbage
Oh,
and then
then
win the
crush him
tournament
with
with
it.
it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
already did.
I don't think him to Torak's garbage. I'm just saying that like I think that there are different cards that you can cut that maybe these decks have been playing for so long, and yet somehow they haven't been able to find a whole bunch of success. I wonder why.
Just Boomer Magic. Show up with Baneslayer Angels and give it a Grafted War Gear and him his hand out. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I like Boomer Magic. I got into this format playing Heartbeat Combo and Polymorph. Like, all right.
Where's that deck now? Okay, so we're not
Well, really
100%
quickly,
convinced if Transmogren's Crown.
thumbs up or thumbs down on the count of 3.
Oh well,
3, 2, 1.
big thumbs up.
We're going to give the 1 thumbs up.
I don't know.
I
There
fear
you
it's
have it.
101st card.
3 to half.
Yeah, I'm in between cards 100 and 103.
Cut your old Rutstein and try this one
Oh,
instead.
Okay, hold on. Now hold on.
All right, let's move on.
Is it me?
It's Wheeler.
It's Wheeler.
Urza's Silex, a 3-mana legendary artifact that has pay 2 white, tap, exile Urza's Silex. Each player chooses 6 lands they control, destroy all other permanents, activate only as a sorcery. When Urza's Silex is put into exile from the battlefield, you may pay 2. If you do, search your library for a planeswalker, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library afterward. Speaking of boomer magic, boom as in boom bust.
I love Disc.
Yeah, I don't think this card is playable.
That's probably fair.
There have been people asking about 5-color Cascade stacks and other big kaboom stacks lists and whether or not this card gets in because it technically has workshop mana. But no, there's just better things to play than this card. And like, you know what the worst kind of Armageddon is?
The one that destroys your planeswalkers?
No, the one that doesn't destroy all their lands.
Yeah.
That's the big problem with it, is just that you work hard to pull off your trick and then they still have 6 lands.
It does blow up planeswalkers and creatures and stuff. Like, that's not nothing, but also
I think that's a bad side, actually, because typically what a lot of these decks like to do is cast a planeswalker and destroy everything else out, right? Because like a lot of the older cards that those archetypes played were templated such that they didn't include planeswalkers.
right. That's why the stacks decks have, thrived in the past and still live in the hearts of many, is that you get like a Chandra Torch of Defiance down and cast Wildfire. Chandra gets to survive. So yeah, I'm not too high on this card. Sorry, folks.
Nelly, you're up.
Yoshin Frontliner, a 1-mana 1/1 soldier with when Frontliner attacks, another target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and it has Unearth for 1 white. So I feel like this is solid in Soldier Tribal because the stats are just fine. It's like an Isamaru. It itself is a 1/1, another creature gets a 1/1, and then it unearths again for only 1 mana. So anytime you need to get a 1-mana body out of your graveyard, if you're milling your whole thing, this is another option. Probably the decks that are like Hermit Druiding want that courier that we talked about before. But this one, you're just going to unearth it alongside all the other elite vanguards you're playing and flipping your young Gideons and jamming in with
Legion's Landing or
your
whatever.
big, yeah, exactly. You're flipping your Legion's Landing more easily because you've got a powerful pile of 1-drops that you beat down with. So in the go fast, good stats, 1, 2, 3 drops, aggro version of Death and Taxes or White Weenie, I think you could see a home for this one.
All right, that was our final artifact. Let's move on to lands now. And I've got Demolition Field. It's a land that taps are colorless, and then 2 untap and sacrifice the Demolition Field. Destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. That player's controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. And then you may search your library for basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. So this is good.
Yeah.
Field of Ruin, is that you?
It's Field of Ruin, but now they realize that Commander is the most popular format.
So they
just fixed it.
Shout outs to Carmen Handy for pushing for this.
Yeah.
Commander players can now not feel bad about including it in their decks.
Yeah. Play this in your D&T lists.
Also, hey, anyone who's done demolition knows that none of that stuff should be standing if this is where the demolition is happening. You got to clean that up. Get the wrecking ball back in there. There's a building still like on its legs there.
Yeah, get that wrecking ball hitting that human figure over
Yeah.
How'd they make it out here?
Looney Tunes style.
All right, next up, Wheeler.
Fortified Beachhead. Nope. As Fortified Beachhead enters the battlefield, you may reveal a soldier card from your hand. Fortified Beachhead enters the battlefield tapped unless you reveal a soldier this way or you control a soldier. And it adds white or blue and pay 5 tap. Soldiers you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So this is a nice little upgrade to the Lorwyn cycle of like Secluded Glen and Guiltleaf Palace and whatnot.
Kind of like a nice homage or nod to that as
Yeah,
well, right?
Yeah, and it's much better because you can play it after you've played out your cards and you still get it untapped.
Or before. You can play it untapped on turn 1,
That's
too.
true.
Yeah, it's
That's
great.
true, yeah. And that activate ability is huge. I think the important thing about this is that shockingly, 2-color decks, their mana honks. Like if you're not a 2-color green deck, your mana is kind of not great. Like Blue Moon's maybe the exception, but that's also just a deck where it's like everything's blue except for this one red source to cast my Lightning Bolt and my Blood Moon, you know? And for a more aggressive version of a blue-white, a two-colored blue-white deck, you don't want to play like an irrigated farmland, like the cycling lands. You don't want to play, you might not even want to go as deep as playing anything beyond Cavern of Souls for your creature lands, like no unclaimed territory or whatever, because you might dip into more non-soldier humans, like, your Mother of Ruins or your Giver of Runes or whatever. So this is a nice reinforcement for that tribe, and God, does it ever make me, like, it makes me just want a full cycle of these. Like, Merfolk would
oh my
kill
God,
for
green
this.
blue Merfolk this land? Holy moly.
Yeah.
It's funny because originally I was not high on this card, and I actually thought about cutting it because I was like, it's very niche. It's only for soldiers. This is before we did the research and found how many soldiers there were.
69.
Really?
69 mono blue soldiers.
Wow.
109 blue X soldiers.
Huh. And I thought the activated ability was completely useless. I thought this was like a rare staple maybe for the limited format, or maybe for standard or something like that. And also, specifically for blue-white, there's an abundance of dual lands compared to a lot of the other colors. You can even get weirdo ones like Nimbus Maze or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's, as far as color pairs go, blue-white has been kind of spoiled for it, but everything you said is also right. We suddenly have, like, soldiers might be much more viable than I assumed.
The blue-white lands, too, they're really good, but they're also really good through the lens of, like, what your average blue-white deck is going to be, like control or even, like, tempo that can maybe take one turn off and then have perfect mana for the rest of the game, or can cantrip their way into better lands. But, yeah, thank you for reminding me about Nimbus Maze, because I think Untapped.
Yeah, your lands in blue-white already probably aren't perfectly set up to easily go like white, blue.
Yeah,
which is going to be what you need a bunch of times in the soldier deck.
No, you're up.
It's Hall of Tagson. Taps for a generic, or taps for a colorless. Pay a generic and tap it. Add 1 mana of any color. So the what's this called?
Unknown
Uncharted?
Shores.
Unknown Shores. Got Unknown Shores. But now you can also pay for and tap it to create a tapped Power Stone token. So I like that. Any lands that can continually provide you advantage. This is a reasonable amount of mana to add a Power Stone. I feel like on a land, at least the upside is so. Sorry, the cost is so low. I mean the barrier for entry to start getting the ability
the cost
to
of
make these power
inclusion
tokens,
or whatever, of course.
exactly, is so low that I would probably try this in Paradox Academy. There's already a lot of important lands in that deck, but I could see it maybe in just any other deck that cares about artifacts.
You know what it reminds me of is those old, like, storehouse lands where you like tap and put a counter on it and you can like cash them out later or
Like
whatever.
the
Red Ship Reef.
Yeah.
Dwarven Ruins or whatever.
Yeah,
like
yeah. This just feels like a modern update on like an old cycle of lands. I mean, we're talking about Boomer Magic, like an old cycle of lands. I don't know how many people even think of or remember, but those used to. I remember Josh Lane would do that too. He'd be like, "Nothing on your turn, end step, put on a counter." You're like, "Oh no!"
Stack up that Dread Ship Reef. Make that Draining Whelk for the cheat.
You can tap your Power Stone to put a charge counter on Dreadship Reef.
This does, speaking of which, this pays into itself, right?
Yep.
Like you
Yep.
make a Power
Power Stone's
Stone,
gonna
then
make
your
a Power
next
Stone,
activation is just cheaper with it.
That's right.
Yeah, kind of appealing.
Yeah, I don't know. Do either of you see putting this in a deck? Or do you think this is trash and you just were talking about it because I want it on the list?
No, I mean, I thought about this card as well. I don't have a home for it. I do worry that this is another one of those cards that is on paper fine. Like there's nothing bad about it, but practically in our format might not get into a lot of decks.
Sure.
Appropriately, I think that where I would want this is Nelson Academy, where like you will play some black cards, like especially Tezzeret, but like you might not have black mana all the time. And so just having more, like being able to just filter. Sometimes you'll have 6 mana, none of it black, and you want to cast this 4 mana Tezzeret, and you're just like,
Right.
So that can help.
All right, and next up, and I believe the last card, is me with Mishra's Foundry. This is a land that taps are colorless. 2 mana. Mishra's Foundry becomes a 2/2 assembly worker artifact creature until end of turn. It's still a land. And 1 and tap. Target assembly worker gets +2/+2 until end of turn. I think there's one other assembly worker in the set that we talked about earlier. And obviously it synergizes with Mishra's
Factory.
Factory, yeah. It doesn't have the same cool line. So Mishra's Factory used to be like the auto-include creature land that we'd play in the set because you could animate block and then pump itself, which was really powerful. Obviously, you can't do that because it only works for an attacking assembly worker. Can't pump itself, which is really frustrating. So this is just like still obviously not as good as the old Mishra's Factory. I think it's kind of cool and it's like a neat nod to an old card, but I don't think it's playable.
Not in like the artifact aggro deck?
I barely even play Mishra's Factory. The main creature lands that I like in the artifact decks are the flying ones.
Oh, Colonnade or Blinkmoth, Inkmoth?
Blinkmoth, Inkmoth are the two that I'm going to play because they're cheaper to activate and they have evasion. And even that deck is color hungry. Even in the artifact aggressive decks, like you're typically using your extra land slots to play out the artifact lands. Like that feels more valuable than a pay 2 mana to get a 2/2, right? Do you disagree?
Maybe this is my boomer magic showing. Nah, dude, I'm always on factories on that deck. Yeah, I love
Foundry. Yeah, but I wouldn't play Foundry.
I'd play Foundry. I think creature lands. I think here's my hot take. I don't know how hot it is. Creature lands are way underplayed in Highlander right now.
You think some of the more
the AFR
the worst ones should be getting
the AFR
more?
ones are so good.
Oh, yeah,
even the bad like World Wake / Battle for Zendikar ones are just great. Like Lumbering Falls is a perfectly okay card to play in like a band control or whatever.
I played Lumbering Falls in Simic Turns.
It just kills people, right?
Yeah. You do just kill people.
If I look at the old ones, I think the only two I still care about are Creeping Tar Pit and Celestial Colonnade. And like even then, it's like, but taking a turn off for specifically the ones that interplay tapped is devastating in our format. These ones are nice because they're untapped, right? But they don't produce color. So
my brother, try playing Stirring Wildwood. It holds up.
I still like Stirring Wild.
Yeah,
I'll still
all right,
play
that's
Stirring
fair.
Wild.
That's fair.
Raging Ravine, I think, is maybe like you're right. Like that's where we're at. You can't afford to put a Gruul tap land into play
Grandpa.
anymore. But Creeping Tar Pit's still good too. Yeah, I don't know.
Like in a control deck or something like that. All right, I believe, and I'll wait for confirmation here, that was the final card from our set review.
I just want to ask if either of you have seen any changelings attacking lately, because pay 1 and tap target attacking like Changeling Outcast gets +2/+2 is sort of relevant.
I mean, I've cast Masked Vandal in the past year.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm playing this in that deck, though.
Well, I mean, speaking of creature lands, there is the snow creature land. That's a changeling. They're best
Faceless
friends.
Haven.
Faceless Haven. Like that's a creature land.
Okay, it's fine. Thanks for waiting in theory crafting.
Yeah. All right. We just did 3 set reviews of this. We have talked about this set for, I don't know have the exact runtime, but at this point, probably 4 hours, probably 90 minutes, and an hour now. We've had an opportunity to look through the cards. We've had an opportunity to evaluate the cards. What do you think of the set as a whole? I'm going to start with Wheeler.
So when we did Dominaria United, I was thinking, this is all I want from a Magic set. But then I wasn't necessarily feeling that, you know? It was like, I like this setting. It's what I grew up with. It does a bunch of cool stuff, but something felt off. Then we got this set, and I'm like, oh, no, never mind. This is all I've wanted from a Magic set. The cards are powerful. They are interesting. You got a bunch of niche players. You got a bunch of role players, flexible cards, and a bunch of different archetypes. Obviously, a bunch of artifacts, unearth, just... The power level is like perfect.
Yes.
It's maybe, I don't even want to say it's a bit pushed because it's pushed in all the right directions, right? There's no Shieldred that makes me go like, oh. But there is some extremely powerful cards that are, build-arounds or you might not play in every metagame, but, they're phenomenal. Yeah, 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10.
Nelly.
I think it's a great set. The Johnny in me is extremely satisfied. Just the variously scale upable constructs that can get hilariously big. The one we talked about the previous set where you can play it for 2 as a 2/3 or 5 as a 5/5, and then you can sacrifice it to make it 3 times as big. And just a bunch of hits like that where it's like the ceiling on the card is so high. And I also think Titania is crazy nuts. Sorry, I'll let you say that again without being repeated. You say it in your own words. And the set obviously did a great job of being a love letter to antiquities and giving you so many like satisfying references to like the cards you may have played as a kid, but now they've been remade into good cards.
Like, oh, Hercule's here.
Yeah.
I love his recall.
Yeah, exactly.
You were saying, Wheeler?
No, I was just going to say her.
Her, yeah.
Oh,
her,
pardon me.
Her recall, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I love artifact sets. I really, really do. And this is probably my favorite set since Aether Revolt. Maybe not enough vehicles. I could have stood for some more vehicles. But I am just so happy. Such a big grin on my face. I mean, obviously, like the lands cards are great. I'm glad they're there. I'm glad Titania is there. I love the support that Elementals is getting because maybe that's the new tribe that I'm really going to start cheering for in every set review. Like, did we get one more? I'll be like Jeremy White with Druids. He'll be like unsufferable. It'll be perfect. Yeah, I wish there were more vehicles. I do want to talk mechanically. I think this is really interesting too. I like that they didn't add something like power or energy. You know, it feels like the mechanics that they've added to the set will be evergreen in a way that they fit well in the flavor of what's happening here, but they'll also continue on in our format for a long time. Like it doesn't just work in a limited environment and then kind of fall apart. So that's great. It's not something that you have to build around like madness. It's like, no, these are just really good vanilla cards with upside when you add the mechanic to it, like Unearth, right? It's all killer, no filler.
The team at Wizards, when they want to do a set or a mechanic like energy, they have to go and do a silver boarded set now.
Oh,
Right.
We've banished.
Like
we've kicked them out.
The tickets and stickers, right?
Sure,
Like your ticket,
yeah.
Your ticket pool is energy, so you're allowed to do it as long as it's just for fun. No tournament energy.
Yeah. No, I think 11 out of 10, sort of as Wheeler was saying. It's not busted. It's flavorful. I'm excited. I want to start brewing. The thought juices have been flowing.
I really like that they made the meld cards so good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like you might actually see meld cards pulled off on North 100 or Friday Night Paper Fight Highlander Nights coming up here. Keep your eyes peeled for those. Just a random little shout out for our other content that we do. Any closing thoughts, or should we call it there, my friends?
Play Titania.
Thank you so much for watching. This has been an absolute delight. Let us know what you thought about the set, your favorite cards, whatever you want to talk about down in the comments below. Reminder, the North 100 is brought to you by you, the support of the Patreon, over at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Been Serge, joined by Nelly.
I was here.
And Wheeler.
Played Titania.
Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.